are continuing on with our review of Unit 1, Foundations of American Democracy. Today we're talking about topic 1.7, which is the relationship between the states and federal government. So we're starting to introduce this idea of federalism, this concept of federalism, which is the sharing of power between national and state governments. The learning objective is that students will explain how societal needs affect the constitutional allocation of power between the national and state governments. So we're talking about this allocation of power between national and state governments, right? Federalism. And the essential knowledge, there's two key powers that you need to know. Well, really three. There's three key powers. So you all know that the 10th Amendment reserves powers to the states, right? It says basically that any power not passed by Congress or listed in the Constitution is reserved for the states. So that is, depending on how you interpret it, a broad interpretation would be that basically anything not in the Constitution is reserved for the states. And then a narrow interpretation would be, there's this Commerce Clause, there's this Necessary and Proper Clause, which basically allow the federal government to, specifically Congress, to pass laws they deem necessary and proper, or anything pertaining to commerce, right? So reserve powers, 10th Amendment, is really important. And then there's these two powers called exclusive and concurrent powers. So exclusive powers are powers that belong exclusively to the national government, to the federal government, right? So we're talking about anything listed in the Constitution, right? The powers given to Congress, the powers given to the president, right? So, we're talking about passing laws, we're talking about carrying out those laws, we're talking about the power to raise an army, raise a military, right? The power to coin money, the power to regulate interstate commerce. All of these enumerated powers listed in Article 1, Section 8. And then all the other powers given to the federal government. So those are our exclusive powers given exclusively to the national government. This third type of power are concurrent powers. So concurrent powers are shared powers that are shared between the national government and the state governments. So this would be like passing laws, right? We live under this federalism, this system of federalism where we have national laws, state laws, local laws, right? So the U.S. Congress passes all laws pertaining to the United States, and then states can pass their own state laws, right? Many states had began to pass laws that were legalizing marijuana for recreational uses, and many states, including Michigan, has passed marijuana for recreational uses, right? So I think the first one was medical uses, right? States began passing laws for medical purposes initially, and then from there, states began passing passing marijuana laws for recreational purpose, right? For the selling and use of marijuana. So that would be a concurrent power to make laws, power to create courts, right? There's state courts and there's federal courts. State courts are created by state governments and federal courts are created by Congress, right? Remember, Congress has the power to create those inferior courts. So those are powers that are shared between the national government and the state government, right? Not simultaneously, but powers that both the federal government and the state governments have, right? So the distribution of power between federal and state governments to meet the needs of society changes as reflected by grants, incentives, aid programs, including federal revenue sharing, mandates, categorical grants, and block grants. Right, so make sure you know what all those are. Grants are basically money given to the states by the national government, right? Money going from the national government to the states, and that can take two forms. That can take the form of a categorical grant, which is basically grants for specific purposes, right? So the states must do specific things as ordered by the national government in order to receive that money. And then block grants are grants that are for general purposes. So generally, The categorical grants give more power to the national government, getting the states to do what they want. right? In order to receive the money, the state must accomplish or carry out certain mandates, right? Certain orders by the national government, versus a block grant is a general grant, right? Given by the national government to the states, where the states have a little bit more leeway on how to spend that money. Federal revenue sharing, we talked a little bit about mandates, right? Mandates are basically orders and commands from the national government to the states. And federal revenue sharing, right? The fact that Congress has the ability to tax, right? The ability to tax and spend. So a big portion of the federal government revenue comes from taxation, right? And oftentimes the federal government will hand out those grants and aid to the states, right? Collect all that money and then dole that money out, which is revenue sharing, right? It's taking all the money that the government has at the end of the budget and kind of doling those out to the states, right? And that could be to carry out mandates from the president, mandates from Congress, could be, again, just block grants given to the states for general purposes. So we're talking about the three powers, the reserve powers of the states. Excuse me, the reserve powers of the states, the exclusive powers given to the national government, and concurrent powers, which are powers shared between the national government and state governments. Right. Then we're also talking about grants, incentives, aid programs, including federal revenue sharing, mandates, right? Funded or unfunded, or these unfunded mandates, right? And then categorical grants and block grants. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Keep studying. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Take care, y'all. Thanks.